Morning, everybody. Parshat Nitzavim Vayelech. We've been spoiled, actually. We haven't had a double parsha in a long time, but I'm going to make it easier for you. As I mentioned last week, so we're not going to be here for the Chagim. So instead of dealing with the parsha, we're going to, I want to share with you what's going to be my Shabbat HaGadol Drasha. I'm going to be in Johannesburg, but I prepared it already, and I wanted to share it with you here. It's, of course, Yom Tov related, okay? You see the topic is the symbiosis of Shabbat and Yom Kippur. Very fancy word, but personally I think Yom Kippur is the fanciest word in that line, but this year is Yom Kippur Shechal Liot B'Shabbat. Right? Yom Kippur comes out on Shabbos. Now, is that simply a calendric coincidence? Or is there something special that we refer to Yom Kippur Shechal Liot B'Shabbos? Right? I think it's the latter, and I'll tell you why. That's what we're going to try to discover, what the uniqueness is of the coming together, the symbiosis, if you will, of Shabbos and Yom Kippur. But why do I say it's the latter? Because we have many times that there's conflicting moments in the calendar. You know, let's say when the first Seder of Pesach night is Motzei Shabbat, so we have to make all kinds of changes, right? So we don't change it, right? For example, Yom Kippur never comes out on a Friday, never comes out on a Sunday. Chazal arranged it that way, right? So if there was a problem having Shabbat and Yom Kippur together, Chazal would have also added Shabbos to that list. So there must be a reason why Shabbat, Yom Kippur, Shechal Liot B'Shabbat is special and has to remain and not be changed, okay? So we're going to try to discover what it is. We're going to do the best we can, okay? So let's start with number one on the sheet. Number one on the sheet is two basic important psukim about Yom Kippur, and we're going to see some interesting things in both of them. Ki bayom hazeh yichaper aleichem l'taher etchem. On this day, we HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we do atonement, we do kapara, and Hashem forgives us. Michol chatoteichem lifnei Hashem titaru. And before Hashem we become pure. There's a tahara process. This is, by the way, the unique aspect of tshuva on Yom Kippur. We can do tshuva any day of the year, but Yom Kippur, it's a completely purifying tshuva. But in any case, this is the classic Yom Kippur pasuk, right? The theme of Yom Kippur is kapara, atonement, the day of atonement. Look at the next pasuk. Shabbat Shabbaton. Yom Kippur. Shabbat, the Shabbos of Shabbosim. Hi lachem. V'initem et nafshoteichem. Chukad olam. And you should, well, you see the English, this here is practice self-denial. But there are two tremendous nuances, two tremendous chidushim in this pasuk. Number one, that Yom Kippur is called Shabbos, right? That is and not only Shabbos, it's it's the mother of all Shabbosim. It's Shabbat Shabbaton. So there's definitely a major Shabbos aspect to Yom Kippur. Secondly, this concept of Yinitem et nafshoteichem. You should afflict your neshama. Now, what's that referring to? It's referring to the 5 Inuyim. We don't eat, we don't bathe, etc., right? So we generally, we consider these things, they're actually physical, aren't they physical? We afflict ourselves physically, but yet the Torah refers to it as V'initem et nafshoteichem. It's our nefesh, it's not just our body, it's not our goof, but we have to look at these things as purifying, as uplifting. They uplift us. They're soulful, nefesh. We're purifying our nefesh. These are soulful things. There's something much more here than physical pain, right? That's why the translation leaves much to be desired. It's v'initem et nafshoteichem. We afflict our soul. We challenge our soul spiritually, physically, through the physical way. Okay, it gets better. Number two, this is the Rambam. The title. Of course, we know the Rambam wrote the Mishnah Torah, where he goes into great detail discussing all of the Taryag 613 mitzvahs and all the halachas. And he divides it by chapters. He wrote it. The Rambam actually is the first author in the history of publishing that wrote an introduction, wrote an index to what he had as a heading before each chapter, even a pasuk before each chapter. What's the chapter of Yom Kippur called? Hilchot Shvitat Asor. Right? Now, that's very strange. The laws of Lulav is called Hilchot Lulav, Hilchot Shofar, right? Hilchot whatever. But Shabbat, Yom Kippur, Shabbos is Hilchot Shabbat. But Yom Kippur he calls Hilchot Shvitat Asor, the laws of the Shabbos of the 10th day of Tishrei. V'halo davarhu. There's something going on here. There's almost an obsession, an obvious obsession with Shabbat Shabbaton. Yom Kippur is Shabbos. Okay? Let's look at something interesting in number 3 and 4. Of course, one of the premier moments that we think about on Yom Kippur is the fasting, the mitzvah of fasting, right? The inui of fasting, right? The inui nefesh of fasting. So listen carefully. Here's the Rambam in 3 and 4 when he talks about the din of fasting for tzoros, when we are in trouble. Divrei sofrim lihitanot al tzara shetavo al tzibur ad sheyeruch hashamayim. That we fast on serious days when we have problems, we have troubles, we're challenged days, turbulent times, and Hashem will forgive us, right? And bimei hatanot taniyot ha'elu zoakim betfilot. We daven. Next halach in 4. Ein gozrim tainit al tzibur lo b'shabbatot v'lo b'yamim tovim. These fasts for tzoros are not to be done on Shabbos and Yom Tov. What's going on? Yom Kippur is Shabbat, Shabbaton. It's Shabbos and Yom Tov. And yet this is the most crucial, important moment of fasting that we have. So there must be something very different about the fast at any other time of the year and the fast on Yom Kippur. And let's see it. Let's look at 4. Here's the Rambam in 5 rather. Here's the Rambam in the laws of Yom Kippur in Hilchot Shvitat HaAsor. And the Rambam writes in the first chapter, 4th halacha, Mitzvat asay acheret yesh b'yom HaKippurim. There's another mitzvah, positive mitzvah on Yom Kippur. V'hi, not to fast, that's negative, not to eat, right? V'hi lishbot bo me'achila v'shtiya. The Shabbos of not eating or drinking. Powerful. It continues, right? What is it? Mipi hashmua lamdu. What is this? Ta'anu et nafshotechem, the pasuk says. Mipi hashmua lamdu inu ishahu lenefesh zatzam. Our oral tradition tells us that the inui, the quote-unquote suffering, the elevation of our, right, is for the nefesh, not the body, and that's fasting. But we don't eat, but it's a positive mitzvah, right? So what's the difference between Yom Kippur and it's the Shabbos of not eating? Let me tell you, Rabbi Yisrael Salanter once said, what's the difference in Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av? The fasting of Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av. He said on Tisha B'Av, who can eat? How can we eat? How can we think about food when there's a churban, when there's so much destruction, we're mourning the destruction of thousands of years? Who can eat? On Yom Kippur, who wants to eat? Who wants to eat on this day? We don't want to eat. We want to focus on teshuva, on coming back to ourselves, on who we really are. We have an opportunity once in 365 days. Who wants to eat? We have no time to eat. We'll eat later. I don't want to eat now, right? So there's something obviously very different. Let me take it a step further and share with you a comment in number 6 on the next page. This is the Or Sameach. The Or Sameach is Reb Meir Simcha Midvinsk. He wrote the Meshech Chochmah on Chumash. The Or Sameach was a genius. The Or Sameach lived actually into the 20th century. He discusses the telephone. He discusses the Balfour Declaration in his Meshech Chochmah on Chumash. Meshech Chochmah actually wrote his sefer when he was 16, the Meshech Chochmah. His father didn't let him publish it because in Lithuania at that time, even a wagon driver, a taxi driver could write a sefer on Chumash, right? Vilna, right? So he said, wait, first publish your novelette, on the Rambam, on Shas, and then you'll publish them. And that's what he did. So he put out the Or Sameach. Or Sameach with the yeshiva with the name Or Sameach in Yerushalayim. But the Or Sameach on the Rambam is on the Rambam, and he says something beautiful. He has a question, number 6. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but he has a question. Yom Kippur comes out on Shabbos. So what happens if someone is a chola and he has to eat? How does he make Kiddush? What's the Kiddush? Does he make Kiddush? What's the Kiddush that he makes, right? So again, now other people are very busy with this. Again, this is a collision. You have a collision of conflicting conditions here, right? It's Yom Kippur, and yet I have to make Kiddush, right? So poskim are very busy trying to untangle, trying to navigate these, right? But what does the Or Sameach say? The Or Sameach says he doesn't do anything. Unfortunately, he can't make Kiddush. You know why he can't make Kiddush? Just the last words. The Zeh Kedushat Shabbat. He says, I'm just going to say, should I do the whole thing? No. Middle of the second line. L'chen b'yom kippurim shechal b'Shabbat cholish yesh bo sakona tzarich lechol. He has to eat. Mora ani de lo mekadesh gam al Shabbat. You don't make Kiddush. The Zeh Kedushat Shabbat. Az shelo lachol. But what's the Kiddush of Shabbos? What's Kiddush? What's Kiddush of Shabbos? The Kiddush of not eating, right? So there is no other Kiddush to make on this Shabbos, the Kiddush of not eating. Unfortunately, he cannot make that Kiddush, but there is no other Kiddush to make. This is the Kiddush of Shabbos, Yom Kippur, the Kiddush of not eating, okay? Very powerful. The symbiotic relationship, he's really saying, this is not a blending. Again, it's not a contradiction of conflicting conditions here. It is one and the same thing. Not just a blending, but one is the fulfillment of the other, right? One enables the other. One defines the other, right? That's why I say a symbiotic relationship. You could even say, you'll forgive me for saying, there's a certain marriage here that's taking place at some point, but then just hold that thought, okay? Let's spend a moment talking about 1, 2, or 3 different issues of Shabbos that we might not have thought about before, that will play into this, will dovetail with our discussion of Shabbat, the Shabbos aspect of Yom Kippur. Look at number 7. This is. I'm sorry? Halacha l'maisa, you do not make Kiddush on Yom Kippur. We paskin like the Or Sameach. But Mirz Hashem, you'll be okay. All right. Look at number 7. This is an astounding statement in the Gemara in Shabbos. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, the rabbi said, Kol ha-meshamer Shabbat kehilchato, anyone who keeps Shabbos properly, afilu oved avodah zara kedor enosh, even if he worships idols like in that original generation of Enosh when they worshipped everything, the sun, the moon, the stars, the yada, 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 right? Mochino, he's forgiven. This is an astounding thing. You don't have this on Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, there's 4 different degrees of tshuva, right? There are certain mitzvahs. If one does tshuva, he's forgiven immediately. But you still have to do tshuva, right? And the others, you do tshuva, and you get yisurim. You have to have some punishment, some pain that goes with it. Other mitzvahs, you do tshuva, but death, misa is mechaperet. When a person leaves this world, that's the fulfillment of his complete tshuva. Right? But you have to do tshuva, right? Here you have on Shabbos, no tshuva. Just keep Shabbos. Just keep Shabbos, and God forgives you for everything. This is an astounding concept. This obviously has to dovetail with Yom Kippur, and certainly the Shabbaton of Yom Kippur, and certainly when Shabbat falls on Yom Kippur, falls on Shabbos, there's a coming together clearly of this concept. Let's see more. Is there a mitzvah of simcha on Shabbos, right? I mean, the answer is, well, one say yes and no, okay? You're right, okay? But really, in the Torah, there's no mitzvah. There's an official mitzvah of simcha on Yom Tov. On Yom Tov, there's a mitzvah to be misameach. Shabbos is oneg. Not simcha. We'll see, but the Rishonim grapple with this. Look, listen, I gave you 2 examples here. And number 8 is the Sifrei. The Sifrei is Tanoim, the authors of the Mishnah. And the Sifrei is darshaning out a pasuk in the Torah, V'yom simchatchem v'yom u'moadechem. So the Sifrei says v'yom Shabbatchem, the days of your Shabbos is your Shabbatot. Yom Simchatchem, of your days of Simcha, elu Shabbatot, right? Moadechem, that's regalim, right? So you see, according to the Sifrei, rather, which is again Tanoim, the Sifrei says Simcha is Shabbos, right? But then you go to number 9. This is from the Gaonim. This is from the Shiltas de Rav Achai Gaon, and he says something here. I'll just tell you what he's talking about. He says, "What's the difference between Shabbos and Yom Tov? Shiva, Rahman al-Litzlan. If someone has to sit Shiva, right? Yom Tov ends the Shiva. Everybody knows that. Shabbat does not end the Shiva, right? Why? Because Yom Tov is Simcha. Shabbat is not Simcha. Yom Tov is Simcha. It is contrary to the Shiva, right? No Yom Tov, right? That's the end of Shiva. But Shabbos is not Simcha. It's Oneg, right? It's Oneg. So Oneg is something else, right? So now look. What do you mean there's no Simcha? No, really, so there is no Simcha. There's a mitzvah of Simcha, mitzvah of Simcha for Yom Tov. But there's no mitzvah of Simcha for Shabbat. However, look at the Netziv. And he grabbed this. Netziv, by the way, is the Emek Shela. He's the commentary on number 9 in the Shiltus. And he says like this, Afal gav de ein bo. Now, by the way, how do we, if there's really no Afal gav de ein bo mitzvah simcha, there really is no mitzvah simcha ela oneg on Shabbos. That's what we have. So, but mikol makom yesh bo simcha, yesh bo simchat hanefesh. There's a simchat hanefesh. Here we go. That word nefesh again, right? We had it in the pasuk, v'anitem et nafsho seichem, right? The fasting of Shabbat is for the nefesh. Everything is nefesh. There's a simchas hanefesh on Shabbos, right? Now, by the way, what do you do with the shiltas? Shabbat, this number 8, right? B'yom simchaschem, that's Shabbos, right? What do you do with that? So the Vilna comes along the Vilna Gaon. And the Vilna Gaon says that's not the proper gerson, it's a mistake. The Shiltus was somebody who transcribed it. It really, here's how the Shiltus goes. Ubiyom Shabbatot, Simchatchem Regalim, Yom Tov. So he corrected the text, right? So, but according to the Netziv, it is Simcha. It is Simcha. It's a different kind of Simcha. I mean, look at this mirrors. Here, I made a list here. Look at this mirrors that we sing, okay? You're all familiar with these mirrors, like very quickly. And they were written by Gedolei HaRishonim and the Arizal, very holy people, early authorities. Look at Reb Moshe ben Clonimus wrote Kol Mekadesh Shvi. That's the first Zemer, Friday night, right? And what did he write? Kol Mekadesh Shvi, Kol HaMekadesh Shvi'i. He says, B'yom HaShabbat Sisu V'Simcha. It's a commandment. He's telling we have to be b'sameach. Zeh hayom asa Hashem nagila v'nismecha bo. We have to be b'simcha, right? Zeh hayom asa Hashem. Okay, Yom Zeh Yisrael, Yom Zeh Yisrael, or v'simcha. I'm not going to start singing it, but yesh miyachsim oto la'ari. It's the Arizal, right? And menucha v'simcha, or la Yehudim, right? Baruch Kel Elyon. Oneg v'gam simcha biyom lemashcha. And Rabbi Yehuda HaLevi actually wrote in the Kuzari that he wrote Derech avodat Elokim b'yom HaShabbat, the way that we serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu on Shabbos, he b'simcha, is b'simcha. U'b'Shabbat nitztavu lachog v'lismoach, that we're b'simcha. So it's the simchas hanefesh. It's not a mitzvah of the Torah, but oneg, it's oneg. Oneg is different. How do you translate oneg? A lot of times you say it's a simcha of Shabbat. It's a celebration. I say, but I think it's more internal. It's bliss. I just wrote down a few thoughts here. It's contentment, satisfaction. It's a celebratory sensation, very different, right? It's Simchas HaNefesh, it's Shabbos. It's Shabbos. Shabbos is here. Shabbos is coming. There's a certain sense that we feel about Shabbos, right? Okay. But you see, the interesting thing, Initim et nafshotechem, in the pasuk nefesh, fasting is called inui nefesh, right? And the Netziv says that simcha, the simcha of Shabbos. Maybe try to define more specifically what the simcha is. Let's go to 11, 12, and 13. 11, 12, and 13 really is based on a question that Rav Hutner asks in his Ma'amorei Pachad Yitzchak, and I didn't bring the source here. And also he answers it with a maral in the Sefer Tiferes in the 40th chapter. I didn't bring all the text here, but I'll just explain it to you orally. He asks a question. 2 reasons why we keep Shabbat. Number 11, why do we keep Shabbat? Why do we keep Shabbos? Because the Kodesh Baruch Hu kept Shabbos, and he rested, right? That's the first, right? So, over the page, number 12. What's the second reason why we keep Shabbos? Right? We all know. V'zacharta ki eved hayita be'eretz Mitzrayim. Because we were slaves in Egypt. V'yotziacha Hashem, right? V'yotziacha Hashem Elokecha. Misham, God took us out. Yitziat Mitzrayim b'yad chazaka v'zro netuya. Al Cain, tzivcha Hashem Elokecha la'asot et yom haShabbat. Okay? What does that mean? You ever ask yourself? Right? If you're sitting at a Seder and your child or your grandchild says, Abba, Saba, Daddy, what does it mean that we keep Shabbos because of Yetzias Mitzrayim? What does that mean? I know we keep Shabbos, Hashem rested, but what does it mean we keep Shabbos because of Yetzias Mitzrayim, right? So look at number 13. And this is, Rav Hutner pulled this out from the Maral. It's gorgeous. And it's a medrash that the Maral is quoting. Tani Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Amra Shabbat lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shabbos said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono shel Olam, L'kulan yesh ben zug. This is at the creation, Genesis. Sunday has Monday, Tuesday has Wednesday, Thursday has Friday. Everybody's got a partner. Everybody's married. I don't have a partner. Give me a partner. V'li ein ben zug. Amar le HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Knesset Yisrael, he ben zugcha. You know who you're married to? You're married to OUisrael. What does that mean? Why? How's that? What's Yetziat Mitzrayim? Yetziat Mitzrayim is the birth of a nation. It's Goy Mikerev Goy. The Jewish people, Knesset Yisrael, was born out of Mitzrayim. The Jewish people became the Jewish people. Slaves can't be defined as people, right? When we came out of Mitzrayim, we became Yisrael. We became Yisrael because that was so Bnei Yisrael was created at Yetziat Mitzrayim. So that's what he means. The Yetziat Mitzrayim is about the marriage of Klal Yisrael and Shabbat. That's what happened at Yetziat Mitzrayim. So here, it's actually a real marriage, right? So let's go further. Now, what does that mean? Now, put Shabbos on a totally different level here. The great writers of the Jewish people often say that what's the difference in a weekday and Shabbos? So Sheshit Yamim Taseh Melachtecha, 6 days of the week. The 6 days of the week are viewed through the prism of what we do. We work, whatever we do, our profession is, whatever we do, that's the 6 days of the week is the prism of what we do. Shabbos is viewed through the prism of who we are, right? This relates to Shabbos and Bnei Yisrael coming out, we're Bnei Yisrael. Shabbos relates to not what we do, but what we are. You know, I saw many years ago, Rav Soloveitchik in a drasha wrote and said actually that he remembers as a child in Brisk that there was a Chassidish Yid, and during the week he was a Wassertrugger, I think the story goes. He carried the water, he was a schlepper, and he wore torn begadim, and he schlepped around, and he as a child he felt sorry for him. So once he went into the Chassidish shtibel to daven on Shabbos, and he sees this Jew, and he looks like a king, and he's the Baal Tefillah, right? Dressed in his Shabbos finery, right? And he's a different person, right? But it's more than that. It's not just the 6 days of the week, as the prism of what we do, we see things, and on Shabbos, the prism of what we are. No, it's not. Shabbos is not the vehicle of our identity. Shabbos is our identity. a Shabbos Jew. Shabbos is our identity. It's one and the same thing. To be a Jew is to be Shabbos, to be a Shabbos Jew. And I'll tell you la halacha. This plays out in halacha. That in ne'emanut, in halacha like this, to trust somebody, right? Let's say I want to eat, somebody invites me to their house to eat. I don't want to insult them. What do I do? Rabbi, what do I do? So what does the rabbi say? Are they Shomer Shabbat? Yes, they're Shomer Shabbat. You can go. That's the halacha. Shabbos creates ne'emanut, that this person is a full-fledged Jew. You know, very often we say, and maybe improperly, you know, are they Shomer Shabbos? Not Shomer Shabbos. But there's a reason for that. That's a negative way of doing it, and we have to stay away from that kind of business. But you hear what's going on here. That's Shabbat is not the vehicle that defines our identity. It is our identity. Okay? Let's go further. It gets even better. Let's go to 14. 14. This is beautiful. Speaking about marriage, right? This really explains something that's so obvious to all of us, right? But here's the Gemara in Shabbos. Rabbi Chanina, me'atef v'koy apanya demalisha. Rabbi Chanina dressed and he went out, let's go out and greet the queen, Shabbos queen. Rabbi Yanai said, Lavish mane mali Shabbos. He put on his talis on Shabbos and he went at boi kala, right? Let us welcome our kala, right? That's why we say, and that's what Kabbalah Shabbos is all about. L'chadodi is all about. We are married. We are married to Shabbos, right? Shabbos is our identity. Ishto kegufo. It doesn't define us. It is who we are. Gets even better. Let's look at 15 and 16. But first, let's go through 16 first. I'm sorry. Just turn the page just to go 16 first. I think it's a better order. The wedding is a much bigger wedding than we think. But let's see number 16. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Lo hayu yomim tovim Yisrael chamishasar ba'av and Yom Kippurim. The two greatest days of Simcha. The two greatest days of Simcha are the 15th of Av and Yom Kippur. We're not going to get into the 15th of Av, right? But what is Yom Kippur? So the Gemara asks, Bishlama Yom Kippurim. So first the Gemara asks, I know what Yom Kippur is. That's obvious, right? What about Tuba? But why is it so obvious? Because Mishum De'itbe, because there's two things. Number one, Slicha u'Mechila. That's Simcha. Oh, but that's what the Gemara says. There is Slicha u'Mechila, which is Simcha, right? And the other thing, V'yesh shenitnu bo luchot achronot. That's when we got the Torah. The Torah that we have, the second giving of the Torah, the second giving of the Torah was on Yom Kippur, right? The 2 points of Simcha. Number one is that he forgives us of our sins. And number two, that he gave us the Torah. Now go back to 15, okay? Now, really, look at look at this. This is Gemara in Tainus. Speaks about the same moment. I'm not going to translate everything here, but biyom chatunato. What's the day of our wedding? When the Tanakh speaks about the day of our wedding. What's the day of the wedding of Klal Yisrael? Ubiyom simchat libo. Yom chatunato ze matan Torah. The chasana of the Jewish people and Hashem. The marriage of the Jewish people and Hashem, right, that's the second simcha of Yom Kippur, right? Not the giving of the Torah. The Torah is the ksuba. The Torah is the ketubah of the marriage between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Bnei Yisrael Shabbos. Bnei Yisrael / Shabbos. Shabbos / Bnei Yisrael together with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? Yisrael, V'araita, V'kuchu Brichu are one. And the Torah, so the greatness of the day the Torah was given, not that the Torah was given. That's the day that with the wedding, we were married to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Torah is the ksuba, okay? So that's the simcha, right? Now, what is that simcha? Simcha is the teshuva, the forgiveness. How do we understand that? Look at 17. This is an incredible, beautiful medrash. You might have heard it before. It's gorgeous. I'm not going to do the whole thing. We're okay. We're okay for time, I think. Okay. This is the medrash in Bereshis Rabbah. Fascinating Maisa. This is a story about a father and a son. The first father and the first of two sons, right? Adam Arishon and Cain, right? Cain does a horrendous thing. He's a murderer. He kills his brother Hevel, right? Okay. Rabbi Chama, b'shem Rabbi Chanina, the rabbi said, Amar, he saw Cain. Adam saw his son Cain leaving the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? Amar Yotza, how did he go? Yotza b'simcha, b'sameach. He was happy. He was happy. He was already judged, right? He had murdered his brother. Pagabo Adam Arishon. His father saw him. Adam saw him. Amar le ma nasa b'dincha. What happened in court? How was your day in court? Amar le asiti tshuva v'nit pasharti. I did tshuva, and the Kodesh Baruch Hu made a deal with me, right? Hitchil Adam Arishon. Adam Arishon mitapech al panav. He smacked himself on the forehead. I didn't realize. Amar kach hi kochesh al tshuva. This is the unbelievable power of tshuva. V'hani lo hayiti yodea. And I had no idea. So miyad Amar Adam Arishon v'Amar. Immediately, what is Adam Arishon's response? He invents in Tillim. He created this Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat. Let's sing praises to Hashem on Yom HaShabbat, right? By the way, the Medrash tells us, Amar Rabbi Levi, HaMizmor Hazeh Adam Arishon Amru. This Mizmor was penned by Adam Arishon. V'nishtakeach midoro. It was forgotten over time. Ubo Moshe v'chidshu al shmo. Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat. But Moshe himself brought it back. You see in the Gemara in Bava Basra, there are a number of capital of Tehillim that were written by Moshe Rabbeinu, and this is one of them. And there's a significance that we'll come to in a second. But why did he say Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat? Right. First of all, what happened here? What was the astonishment of Adam Arishon? He was confronted by the forgiveness of Cain, and he was astonished by the simple fact that what actually happened is HaKadosh Baruch Hu elegantly separated man from his behavior. Yes, Cain killed his brother. He murdered him. But Cain was no longer a murderer, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu judges us not by what we do, but by who we are. Shabbos, Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbos is not viewed as simply as a day of menucha. It's a vehicle of tshuva. Shabbos is a day of tshuva. That's what he saw here. This is what took place here, right? So the question is why on Shabbos? Why didn't this mice take place on Yom Kippur? Right? Okay, it's a little tricky in terms of, how do you write the story? This is talking right at the beginning of Bereshit, but it's on Shabbos, not on Yom Kippur. You'd think such a thing would happen on Yom Kippur. The fact of the matter is, as we saw before from that Gemara, that on Shabbos, if a person keeps Shabbos completely, properly, he's forgiven without anything. There's a power of tshuva to Shabbos, which is embedded, which is partnered, which is married to Yom Kippur. Also, so Yom Kippur and Shabbos are really the same. I mean, Yom Kippur is Shabbat Shabbaton. It's the mega Shabbos, right? But Adam, what he saw was the same. It's all the same. It's the same. You know what it is? I'll tell you what it is. Shabbos, 52 weeks of the year, is the journey of this tshuva, the journey of this process, of being who we really are, not focusing on what we do. Shabbos is the journey. Yom Kippur is the destination. You know what Yom Kippur is like? You go to a bar mitzvah or a wedding, a bar mitzvah, a grandchild, and you sit there and you're thinking, I remember my bar mitzvah. It was so special. And I remember my daughter's bat mitzvah. I remember my son's bar mitzvah. I remember my children's wedding. It was so special. And now here I am. At this tremendous simcha. We go through life. There's a journey of Shabbos, of Shabbatot, where we do what we're supposed to do on Shabbos properly. If we view ourselves on Shabbos by who we are and not by what we do, I might have murdered somebody, but I'm no longer a murderer. I ask for forgiveness. Then on Yom Kippur, HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks at us that way too. He judges us by what we are, not by what we do, right? So now, what are the two dimensions of Shabbos? They're simcha. They're both simcha. That's what the Gemara said. Yom Kippur is the greatest day of simcha because he forgives us, right? And because we were married, because of the Torah, because we were married to him. It's the day of our wedding and the day he forgave us. So he said, what's the simcha? I mean, kapara, it's a solemn day. It's a serious day, right? We tend to look at a day of forgiveness. Our life is in the balance. But yet, according to the Gemara, it's a day of simcha, right? So they're not two conflicting emotions here. How do we deal with these two conflicting emotions on Yom Kippur? On the one hand, my life is in the balance, and on the other hand, it's the simcha that the Torah was given, our simcha, the day of the wedding of Klal Yisrael. They're both simcha. The simcha of knowing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us and wants to embrace us and wants to forgive us. All he asks us to do is to focus on who we are, not on what we did. Get rid of what we do. We turn off that phone on Shabbos. Turn off the phone on Shabbos. Now we do things, we don't do things. No, turn off the phone. That's not who I am. It's like, a father gets angry at his child and he yells at the child and he sends him to his room. And about an hour later, after his wife gives it to him for overreacting, he goes up the stairs to the child, knocks on the door, and says, "I love you." He says, that wasn't me. That was not me. It wasn't me. And that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to say to him. That's not me. That's not who I am. That's what I did. Cain, right? He might have murdered somebody, but he's no longer a murderer. He's not a murderer anymore, right? So last year, we said on Yom Kippur, Mi ba'esh, mi ba'mayim, right? U'nesana tokef, mi yichya, mi yamut, who's going to live, who's going to die, right? We never imagined the terrible losses that we're living through right now. We never imagined the two wars that Knesset Yisrael would be fighting, the war here in Medinat Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael, and the war against the Jews, the worldwide anti-Semitism. We never imagined that this would happen. We never imagined it. What we have to do, now by the way, I pointed out in the past that for the last 70, 80 years has been a bleep on the radar screen. Our generation, and certainly our children, right, and our grandchildren, we lived, it was a different world, right? But this new reality that we're living through now is really the old reality. This is the reality of Jewish history from the time Jewish history began, right? What we've been living through was a bleep on the radar screen, right? That's what we're dealing with now. But it's happened now, right? And look what's happened. Look what's happened. Look what's been happening to the Jewish people who have been so assimilated, and the conversation here in Israel was constantly about what divides us and became really what unites us. And there are definitely detractors, but they're not in the majority. As loud as they might be, and as loud as the media makes them, they are far, far into the minority. Right? We know what's been happening over this year. The number of Jews who have come back to Shabbat, the period of time for 2 or 3 months you couldn't get a pair of tzitzis. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying a reason of why chas v'shalom this happens, or the silver lining of this, right? I'm not one of those people who speaks with confidence about the reason why certain things happen to the Jewish people. Only fools say such things. That's because of this mitzvah we didn't do that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that. But we do know one thing. We know what has happened. Assimilated Jews have been waking up. Jews have been coming closer. We in the faith community have been stronger in our learning, in the quality of our Shabbat, the quality of our mitzvahs, right? It has brought us together, right? You know that, forget about what you hear about what's going on the college campus. Let me tell you what you don't hear. The attendance at Friday night Hillel Shabbat dinners has tripled and quadrupled in this year. Now, that's an amazing statement, because we really don't understand the assimilation in America today. It's not Hester Street, right? Kids today, American Jewish students today, never saw a grandmother light Shabbos candles. The assimilation is beyond. And yet, again, this is not a silver lining. This is not a response why these things happen. But we do know one thing. This is happening. It's happening, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us, leave aside what you do and be who you are, and I will forgive you. And one thing I will say, and you don't have to be a chacham, you don't have to be a navi, but I will say that it's no coincidence that the first Yom Kippur after October 7th is Yom Kippur Shechal Liot B'Shabbat, what we have been talking about, that symbiosis, that blending, that power of Shabbos and Yom Kippur, the Shabbos aspect of Yom Kippur, the Yom Kippur aspect of Shabbos every week, the journey leading up to the destination, all happened now, this year for us. All he wants to do is for us to discover who we are, to defend who we are, to determine who we are, and yes, to defend who we are, right? And Hashem will forgive us. He'll do the same. He'll do the same. And we should have a K'tiva v'chatima tova. Okay.